What's up, everyone? Welcome to this day in Philly sports history for June 2nd, 2023. I'm your host, Jim Montgomery. Before we get into today's episode, quick housekeeping note. New Back to the Future was posted last night. We dove into the 1986 Sixers offseason, basically ending and putting a bow on this 2022-2023 Sixers season. Much like we did with the Eagles, we're mourning and we just part of the mourning process, and it seems like this is what we do as Philly fans. We kind of dive in head first and just take on the pain and just wallow in our misery for a little bit. And I think we've done it enough. This is a nice way to put a bow on it. We had Nick Nurse hired this week, so I think it was a good transition. But check that out, Back to the Future with a PH wherever you get your podcast. Last week's episode was on Larry Brown and Allen Iverson. On the anniversary of when Larry Brown resigned. Like I said, we dove into the 86 offseason, which quite frankly, in my opinion, give it a listen and let me know what you think, was hands down the worst offseason in the history of the whole organization. And that's including when they traded away Wilt Chamberlain. But speaking of Allen Iverson, Larry Brown, you may have seen the Sixers documentary on NBA TV or NBA, I don't know whether it's NBA TV or NBA Network, but whatever it's called, the NBA channel. And it's called Everything But the Chip, and it was the story of the 2000-2001 season. They chronicled the relationship basically between Larry Brown and Allen Iverson. It was really, really well done. They interviewed a lot of the people. I finished it up this morning, actually, at the gym. Started it last night. Took some notes. I may or may not do like a quick little update to that Larry Brown, Allen Iverson episode. But just some of my things just like off the top of my head that stuck out that I jotted down. And the big thing that stands out to me, and I'll spend a couple minutes today on it, was the fact that the whole city came together. And I know we came together in 93. We came together last year for the Eagles, 04 when the Eagles went to the Super Bowl. But I don't think I've ever seen the city come together the way it did. And not only the city, and they kept saying the city in the documentary, but just the region in general just came together and just everybody was happy. And it was just an amazing time to be a part of. Basically, the other takeaway I got was one of the things we said was possibly maybe Billy King could have done more. And it seems like Billy King just was more of a figurehead, kind of a yes man to Larry Brown. It said right there in the documentary that Larry Brown had the final say in everything. And it almost makes me want to, and this is why I might do a follow-up, double down on what I had said in that podcast about Larry Brown, because I feel like Larry Brown was a good coach. I'm not saying that, but it's like he surrounded himself by yes man, and then when AI kind of challenged him, that's when shit hit the fan. But more on that. I still feel that had Allen Iverson had a sidekick, things would have been different. You just need to look at the finals to see that. He willed them to win the winning game one. Game two, they missed some foul shots, and if anybody could have hit a shot, they had game two. They could have taken both of the games in LA. All of a sudden, it's a different series. They had a shot in game three when Shaq fouled out, too. So I just feel like there could have been a sidekick, and that was basically my takeaway with Larry Brown. Like, I don't know if he did enough. He built the team around AI, yes, but they didn't have another alpha on that team. And I mean, they even said it. Pat Carucci said it a couple times that Allen Iverson was the sun, and all the other role players were the stars, kind of orbiting around him. And you needed like a giant dwarf planet or whatever the astronomy term is. But McKee, I forgot how good Aaron McKee was for that team and how he just kind of whatever needed to be done. And like I said, I'll get more into it because I have a ton of notes that I don't want to spend this whole podcast on. But I highly recommend watching it. And I mean, I think today, just watching the end of it when they talked about that playoff run, just how captivated the city and the whole region was for that team. It was just a lot of fun. I got very pumped up and goosebumps. And the last two takeaways, I think, one, I don't think we appreciated AI as much as we should. The man was clutch. The man just stepped up and did what he needed, wore his heart on his sleeve, and I don't think there's anybody who played in the history of the NBA, and I'm going to go that far, as hard for being so small. So I mean, I know we love him and everything, but I don't know if we truly appreciate it, just how awesome he was. And the other thing was just how good Vince Carter was. So definitely check that out. That was sort of my takeaway, my notes on that. Back to the real sports that are going on now. Phillies, man, they lost again 4-2. They jumped out early 2-0 and got swept by the Mets. 0-1 with runners in scoring position. Scherzer was just dealing, and when you get 2 runs early on Scherzer, you got to make them count. I said the other day they're on the brink. I said I wasn't sure what they're on the brink of, and I mean, this is a very pivotal series coming up against Washington. They could be in trouble. More on the Mets in a minute. But on this day, we're going to stick with the Phillies. Back in 2002, so June 2nd, 2002, the Phillies beat the Expos 18-3. They erupted for 10 runs in the bottom of the first, including a grand slam by pitcher Robert Person. Pat Burrell also hit another home run in the first. Person wasn't done, though. He had another one in the fifth. This one was a 3-run homer with 2 outs. Both of his home runs came with 2 outs. So ultimately, when the dust cleared, Robert Person that day went 2 for 3, 2 home runs, 7 RBIs, and a walk. Also pitched 5 innings, gave up 3 hits, 1 run, which was unearned, 5 strikeouts. The 2002 Phillies, you might remember, were Scott Rowland's. It was when Scott Rowland was traded. It kind of forced his way out. And again, I mentioned it yesterday, indifferent about him getting inducted into Phillies Wall of Fame. I truly, truly hope that they're not thinking about retiring his number. I might protest and just buy a bunch of number 17 jerseys just because, if they do that, with random names on it. But actually, no, I'm not that petty. I'm petty, but not that petty. But on this day, back in 2002, Robert Person hit 2 home runs. Excuse me, 2 home runs and an 18-3 victory over the Expos. All right, mentioned this yesterday, but it is almost Father's Day, and we've been talking a lot about our friends at phillygoat.com. Go check them out. I mean, they have a ton. We just were talking about the AI and everything. They have a ton of AI-related Sixers gear. They have a ton of stuff for Joel Embiid, Sixers, Eagles, Flyers, Union, you name it, they got it. Go check them out. They're your one-stop shop for all your Philly-based apparel needs. That's phillygoat.com. If you use the promo code Jim Montgomery, it's all one word, you'll get 10% off of your order. You can also click the link in the bottom of wherever you're listening to this, unless you found it on Twitter, which you need to go to phillygoat.com or go through the YouTube channel to get it. Use the promo code Jim Montgomery. Great way to treat your dad, treat your brother, uncle, grandfather, or treat yourself for that matter. Nothing wrong with that. If you're a father, buy yourself a Father's Day present. All right, June is rivalry month here on this day in Philly sports history. And today, like I said yesterday, I just randomized my list of rivals. And doesn't get better than today's. The New York Mets are today's rival of the day. All time, the Phillies lead the series 541, 516, and 1. That includes yesterday and this week's sweep. And ironically enough, this was not a big rivalry until probably about the mid-2000s, early 2000s. And that's because the teams were never good at the same time. When the Mets won the World Series, the Phillies were terrible. When the Phillies were good in the 70s, early 80s, the Mets were terrible. When the Mets were good in the late 80s, Phillies were terrible, and so on and so forth. It wasn't until the Phillies started getting good, the Mets were getting good, that this rivalry started heating up. And I think that it really picked up with Jimmy Rollins when the Mets were the defending champs of the NL East. Jimmy Rollins said in 2007 we're the team to beat. And then went out and they won the division. But then the Mets choked down the stretch. And yes, this is going to definitely have a Philly slant to it. This is a Philly-based podcast. Deal with it. But when the Mets blew a 7-game lead with 17 games left, they chased them down again the next year in 2008 when the Phillies won the World Series. They've never played each other in the postseason, though. That obviously could change now with the extra wild card and everything like that. There have been a ton of memorable moments throughout this. Obviously, they play each other all the time. They're division, close rivals. But some of the ones that stick out are obviously Jim Bunning's perfect game that was on Father's Day. That was against the Mets. This is where I got the Biden from. The night that Osama bin Laden was shot, they were playing the Phillies. The Phillies were playing the Mets on Sunday Night Baseball, and that's when the announcement kind of came through. I was at that game. It was incredible. I remember hobbling up because it was a day after a day of a Broad Street run, and saying, "We got him, and everybody was like, whatever, you're just drunk." And then it started spreading the USA chant. So I'm getting chills just thinking about it. It was such a great just experience in general. But I think, though, those are the two of the bigger memories. Obviously, the Phillies chasing down the Mets in 2007 is up there. I'm sure Mets fans will say, "But we swept you this week." Yeah, that's great. But I think you have it's one of those classic rivalries. You have the New York Philly connection, but the Mets and the Phillies are not so much different in the fact that for the longest time, the Phillies were the little brother in Philadelphia. The A's were the better team. In New York, the Mets are the little brother to the Yankees. So I think that's probably where a lot of the chip on the shoulder in this rivalry comes from. Plus, in Philly, we have a chip on our shoulder about everything. It's the only place I know that somebody will get ready to fight over who's got the best water ice. And, both of them are probably phenomenal, but we're ready to fight over, no, Rita sucks. Whatever. But final tally here, and I think we're going to give the slight edge to the Phillies in this rivalry. 2 World Series, 8 pennants, 11 division titles, 1 wild card. The Mets, 2 World Series, 5 pennants, 6 divisions, and 4 wild cards. Slight edge to the Phils in this one. Sorry, Mets guys. Like I said, this is a Philly-based podcast. But in all seriousness, I have to say, I think I went down yesterday and we were talking about the Buccaneers and how they're like probably a top 3 Eagles rival for me just because of the way their history is played out. I think the Mets are a top 3 overall rival for me. And when it comes to like just the teams you hate, obviously you got the Giants, Cowboys, and I think the Mets are right there. Braves are right there. For me, it's not so much a rival anymore, but when I was at Temple, UMass is up there. But for me, the Mets definitely are a top 3 rival of a Philly sports team. But they got the best of us this week. So we are now, I think, 4.5 games behind the Mets. So go ahead, Mets. You can have this one. Our World Series title is a little bit fresher than your last one. So we got that going for us, which is nice. But on this day in Philly sports history, back in 2002, Phils beat the Expos 18-3 behind Robert Person's 2 home runs. Definitely go check out the Everything But the Chip documentary. Let me know what you think. It ties right into the podcast from last week. So give that a listen. Watch a documentary this weekend and let me know who was to blame for it not working out in Philly. Check out the latest on the 86 Sixers offseason and just come join me in wallowing in pain and mourning. But I do think after this podcast, we're able to put the bow on it, move on, start looking forward to next season. Go check out phillygoat.com, promo code Jim Montgomery for your Father's Day needs. This has been This Day in Philly Sports History. I'm Jim Montgomery. Go have yourselves a Friday, and until next time, I will see you when I see you.